JB here, JB here. Hope everyone's doing outstanding. Friday, June 6th, 326 on this fine afternoon. Talk really quick about the market. Some names I'm looking at, go from there. I don't have all my charts, so it's going to be a really quick rant here. But S&P, NASDAQ, all the major indexes up 1%. The SPY is right here at that 600 threshold. Remarkable stuff. Uh, yeah, I mean, and despite that, yields are higher and the dollar's higher. So still, the higher the yields, or as the yields continue to head higher, at some point it's gonna have an impact, right? I mean, that's always the case. I mean, it's momentum names, especially high debt names. Those eventually, the names, especially the momentum names, that have done well despite the huge. The higher the yields go, it's just going to happen. So hopefully that doesn't happen, right? I already have President Trump this morning saying Fed Chair Powell should do a full 1% cut, right? I mean, the first the first start of the rate cuts was a jumbo cut, and that was like a surprise. It wasn't at 1%. So, based on the economic data, strong jobs report this morning, it's hard to kind of like uh, make the case that they should cut rates, right? I mean, unless inflation doesn't really start to cool down. Inflation really starts to cool down. So anyway, interesting stuff here today. Yesterday, I mean, at this time, we had the whole spat with Trump and Musk. So hopefully, put that in the rearview mirror. Maybe there's some kind of handshake or some just a gentleman's agreement where they can get this like embarrassment of a situation out of the way, and markets can kind of go on, but kind of like shook it off, And like I was saying it this morning, it's not like the first time Trump has had these PR disasters where Tesla, if you're a shareholder, you're like, what are you doing, man? Putting his hands in things he shouldn't be putting his hands in, making comments. So, and his political foray has been the last kind of, I wouldn't even call it a stunt, but that's just how he works. So you either accept those things, right? Same with his quirkiness, right? I mean, people look at him and they try and make fun of his mannerisms or whatever, but he's quirky, right? And he has Asperger's or whatever you want to call it. I mean, that's who he is, and he's a heck of a lot smarter than I am. But anyway, so rants for other days. So I would love to have seen just to close over 597. So it's kind of like a bonus here, but maybe it sets things into next week. I mean, should I say it? All-time highs, however crazy that would be. Only a month and a half removed from market Armageddon, where I mean, you still have the bears thinking that we're on a crash course with not only a recession but this major meltdown. And maybe we are. Musk after the close yesterday when he's on Tweetworks. Yep, tariffs going to cause a recession in the back half of the year. You know what? They're going to cause a recession if these deals don't get worked out and these higher tariff rates are kept on these countries after July 9th, whatever that date is. So that as that date gets closer, it's almost like the debt ceiling, except I think it's more impactful than the debt ceiling because if they don't push those tariffs and get these deals done, yes, serious issue too. All right, so that's kind of like overall market. Next week, we don't have much in the way of earnings, and the following week is the Fed meeting. GameStop, Chewy, Adobe. I think there's one other big name that reports. I'll have to go look, but nothing too crazy. But of course, GameStop's the one that will catch my eye. Probably, it's funny. The only way we'll find out how much Bitcoin and the price is probably when they file their 10Q. So you hope they give a little more color, but GameStop does not do press conferences, or they haven't since Brian Cohen took over for earnings, right? So maybe that changes. It'd be nice to hear kind of a little bit of their story. But anyway, that's kind of the overall market. We'll have to come up with new new trading ranges. It was 586 to 597 for the last 2.5 weeks. So maybe we can put that 597 kind of as support. We'll see if we tap that maybe a day or two next week. Yeah, and and then hopefully yields can just not go too high, right? And again, I think some of it's a function of the debt, right? So it just, yeah. And again, I think it's a good thing that the Fed has the ability to cut rates, right? So that's always good. All right, now just individual names. Unfortunately, today's one of those days where 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago when we had a little more volatility, the Friday lottos had momentum, right? One way or the other. Today we had some runs out of the gate, and then I went to go after somebody like Broadcom, and then it fizzled, right? The good thing about when I do my lottos, if you follow some of my lotto trades within a couple minutes, usually 5-10 minutes after, I would say 98.5% of the time, the position I enter is higher by 25%, sometimes 50, sometimes 100% within a couple minutes of me entering, right? So if you if you're able to trade that and have a little more, if you're a little less aggressive, you do well. I hold, right? So especially when they're lottos, I'm not looking for 50%. I'm looking for the first 100% and then even more. And I looked at Broadcom. I thought it was going to go up past 260. Great earnings. Looked like it was on its way. First, there was a dip at the open. I'm like, oh, round two's coming. Once it went over 254, so I was actually looking at the 260s, and those were like 30 cents. But then by the time I looked, they were like 50 or 60. I'm like, I'm not paying that for option that expired that day. So I went further out. And then, of course, within a matter of 15 minutes, the stock goes from 254 down to 251. I held on to them just because once the premiums came out, it doesn't make sense. It's not a far move, right? I mean, it was only 11:30. Still have 4.5 hours left in the session. Anything can happen. So same with RH. RH, I was actually looking at the 187.50s, and they were like 25 cents. And then boom, it spikes 186 and changed by 11 o'clock. Those 187.50s were like up 400% or so. I went out, got the spec 90s. Those were up like 60 or 75%. And then we had that dip after the noon hour, and here it is at 180, 187. Thought process there on RH. They report earnings next week. They just announced the earnings date yesterday. Premiums are elevated for next week, so I thought maybe there'd be some shenanigans into the weekend. It looked like that was going to happen. Not only that, we have news out that there's going to be another meeting with China. So that was kind of the thought process there. All right, so now on to other names, and first, quick Lemonade. It's almost at $40 here, and I think there's, I wouldn't call it a breakout point, like the tipping point for the shorts, but the higher it goes, the higher the probability or chance that there's going to be a bigger upside move, right? I mean, the higher it goes, it's just going to happen. So, 30% short interest. I think it's a name. TSB has been asking for names that you would hold for like 10 years or 18 years, or whatever. Now, you know what? You look at sectors, and I always try and think of names, right? My top 5 stocks, you have to be a disruptor in a sector, in my opinion, right? High growth disruptor, best in class, moat around your business, all those kind of buzzwords, right? And if you look at Lemonade's like a disruptor, right? And it's grabbing share in a sector that needs to be disrupted. So that's why when you see me get calls on Lemonade, it's not good, it's there's other people on the other side of the fence that think it's not going to make its way in. Insurance sector is a hard place to get into because you have to hold a lot of capital, the reserves, claims. We saw what happened with the California wildfires. Fires can certainly, bankrupt some of these things. But you look at Lemonade, it's like well positioned to do well. So that's why I keep looking at calls, especially on when it shows some strength. My calls are finally back into the green. I was going to get some later dated strikes, but those are expensive. So in lieu of doing that, I'll just hold on to my June 50s and then, June 45s. And then I think it heads to $50 in the coming weeks. Call me crazy. And if it gets a squeeze, going higher than that. It was 50, I think it was $56 back at the end of 2024. So thankfully, I mean, it was at $38 yesterday. Gave it back with the Trump POTUS spat. It just fell with the market. And a lot of times when it moves, it's not because anything fundamental. It's just short people trying to trying to pressure it, right, to instill fear into folks who are holding. So strong here. It's been holding high. So hopefully over $40. I'll continue to hold those in the weekend. When they're getting close to a double. Once they get to a double, I'll close them out to cover course, ride the rest. JOBY they just had news. POTUS just announced. I don't know if it's an executive order around drones. I forget what the order is titled. Unleashing America's Dominance. So he announced, signed an executive order to ensure America's leadership, blah, blah, blah. But in that, he talked about, or at least there's a part in there, talks about vertical takeoff and landing, which is what JOBY is, right? A pilot program to accelerate deployment of safe and lawful vertical operations in the United States. So, I mean, the big hurdle for any JOBY and any of these is regulations, right? And I mean, I'm big about I understand the safety part, right? So you got to balance the safety of folks with the regulation side. And to me, it just seems like every accident or whatever that goes on, there's more regulation put on things. And I'm not saying there shouldn't be. It just, if someone wants to fly an unsafe helicopter, they should, no, joking aside. But finally back over $8 here. I'll just continue to hold my July strikes. I want to add some more, but it's just been volatile. I just think at some point it's going to find footing and then really start to take off over $10. So that's JOBY there. Wayfair, I wish it was doing a little better here today. I mean, it's pretty much, it was flat. Yeah, it's up 0.07% right now, right at 45. My calls are still green. I think this heads over $50 as well. Maybe there'll be some updates on China. I mean, well, China, Vietnam, and Southeast Asia and Vietnam. And then, I was staring at Roku here today. I mean, it's one of my favorite stocks. So if I had to make a list of 10 stocks, Roku's in that top 10. And then one of these weekends, maybe there's going to be some M&A and I'd be kicking myself. And showing some nice strength here. I don't have too much going into next week, and I'm hoping I get another opportunity to get some strikes. Uh, so don't be surprised I had some Roku. Also, I keep looking at SERV. I think it's SERV Robotics. I just got to spend more time over the weekend doing due diligence. It's a name that pops up a lot, especially on FinTwit, on when I'm reading Barron's or some of these you know article publications, Yahoo, right? And you see it on the side. And sometimes I take that with a grain of salt because usually those are like the meme stocks. But then you look at this, and if you look at what's going to be important going forward, or at least in the next even couple years now, obviously the AI side, but now robotics, right? That's like the next, well, quantum computing. Oh, there's all these buzzwords. But if once we get to and the robo taxi rollout and all that, I'm sure there'll be more talk in the next couple of weeks too. But that's kind of like setting the stage. And then when people start seeing the possibilities, I mean, just who would have thought? And they make fun. Well, uh, there's things that have happened over the years. I remember, and I've used these analogies. I'm not here to talk about Musk again, but I remember the first time that they tried to do a reusable booster, and they landed it. They were landing on a platform out in the sea for the first time. It's like a sci-fi novel, right? But this is before he's done it all these times. Well, not he, SpaceX, but they finally go to do it, and the rocket crashes and blows up, and then all these people who were bearish Tesla. This I don't know how many years ago, maybe it's 6, 7. They're all like saying, "Oh, what like mocking him." Me, I remember the first time the SpaceX shuttle went to the space station, whatever. It was like it's like something you want to show your kids. It gives them like gives them hope, right? I mean, I think that's what's lost when we used to have NASA and Challenger going to the well, not Challenger, but when before that happened, it gives people inspiration to dream for the stars, right? So there's other things that he's done, like the Neuralink. People make fun. Oh my gosh, you're gonna put a chip in someone's body. We're gonna do all this stuff, but at the end of the day, like someone who doesn't have motor function can all of a sudden can get that back, and it's because of this, right? So it just drives. But anyways, my point is rationale is like the robotic side. I don't think a lot of people see the potential, and by the time you see the folks, the mainstream sees the potential, some of these stocks are gonna be like up tenfold from where they are. I'm not so sure SERV is one, but I got to do some research over the weekend. Don't be surprised if I find some tickers that yeah. And that's it, folks. Have a great week. I'll be back on audio later. Rock and roll. That's a rant for another day. Apologies.